Number the ultimate betrayal. How I destroyed my husband's business empire after he chose his mistress over our family number part 1. The perfect life that wasn't. I'm sitting here at 2 a.m. still shaking. My name is Sarah. I'm 38 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I went from being a devoted wife and mother to becoming the woman who burned everything down. And honestly, I regret nothing. Let me start from the beginning, because this isn't just about infidelity. This is about betrayal on a level I never thought possible. My husband, Michael, is 42. When I met him 15 years ago, he was this ambitious young entrepreneur with big dreams. I was working as a marketing consultant, making decent money, but I believed in his vision. We got married after 2 years of dating, bought a house in Connecticut, and had 2 beautiful kids, Emma, who's now 12, and Lucas, who's 9. Michael started his company, Vertex Solutions, in 2015. It's a software development firm focused on enterprise solutions for retail companies. For the first 5 years, I was there with him. I mean, there. I took a part-time job so I could still manage the house and kids. I did the accounting for the business for the first 3 years without paying myself a single dollar. While he was closing deals, I was organizing his files, scheduling his meetings, helping him prep for client pitches. By 2019, Vertex was doing really well. We're talking multi-million-dollar contracts. Michael brought in investors, hired a full team, and by 2021, the company was valued at $8 million. That's when everything started to change, and I didn't even see it coming. Michael started working later and later. Client needs, he'd say. Emergency meetings. I believed him. I'm not stupid. I just trusted my husband. That's what you do when you've built a life together for 15 years, right? In March 2023, I discovered the truth. I needed a document from Michael's laptop to sign for something related to the kids' school. He told me to just grab whatever I needed. I was looking through his email. Yes, I know that's invasive, but this is where our story pivots. And I found emails between him and someone named Natasha Volkov. She's his director of operations. She's 26 years old. The emails weren't subtle. There were hotel receipts. There were texts like, "Can't wait to feel you inside me," and "Your wife is so boring she doesn't deserve you." And my personal favorite, "We should tell her. You could divorce her, I'd get half the business, and we could run it together." I literally could not breathe. I was standing in my kitchen, and I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I had to sit down. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the laptop. The betrayal? It was one thing, but reading that Natasha had plans about my marriage, that they were scheming about taking over his business, that she called me boring, something inside me died that day, and something else, something darker, was born. I didn't confront him immediately. That was my first smart move in what would become a very strategic series of decisions. Instead, I called my brother, David. He's a lawyer in Boston. Corporate law, specifically M&A, and business disputes. I told him everything. He came to our house that evening, and we sat in my car in the driveway while I showed him the emails. "Sarah," he said, reading through them slowly, "these are damaging, really damaging. Not just for infidelity. There's discussion of fraud here. They're literally discussing fraudulent transfer of assets." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," David said carefully, "that if Michael tries to do what they're discussing, transferring company assets or equity to Natasha, that would be illegal. It would harm you as his spouse and your family. You need to document everything, and you need to talk to a family lawyer immediately." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Michael while he snored, and I made a decision. I was going to protect my family, and I was going to make sure that bastard paid for what he'd done. Number Part 2. The preparation. The slow burn. The next morning, Michael left for work like normal. He kissed me goodbye. That kiss, knowing what he'd been doing, almost made me vomit, and headed to the office. The moment his car left the driveway, I called a family law attorney in Hartford named Patricia Chen. I'd found her through an online directory, and her website mentioned high net worth divorces and business asset protection. We got an appointment for that afternoon. Patricia was incredible. She was this sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, and when I told her what was happening, she didn't gasp or act shocked. She just started taking notes. First, she said, "I'm going to recommend you hire a forensic accountant before you file for divorce, or even tell your husband you know about the Tao affair. We need to understand exactly what assets are in that business and where the money is going." "How long will that take?" I asked. "A few months, maybe longer. We need to be thorough. If there are assets being hidden or transferred, we need documentation." "And if there are?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Then we pursue them aggressively. We file for discovery. We might even involve the SEC if there's fraud. Your husband could face serious legal consequences beyond just a divorce settlement." I hired the forensic accountant that week. His name was Robert Huang, and he was like a bloodhound. He needed access to bank statements, business records, credit card statements, everything. I helped him get it. Michael had no idea. I had his passwords written down in a notebook I kept hidden in my closet, behind a loose panel that had been there since we moved in. For 3 months, I played the role of the perfect wife. I made dinner. I smiled. I had sex with him. God, that was hard. But Patricia advised me to maintain normalcy so he wouldn't suspect anything. Michael was in heaven, by the way, completely oblivious. Meanwhile, Robert's investigation was revealing some very interesting things. Michael had opened a secondary bank account in November 2022, right around when he probably started sleeping with Natasha. Over the course of 6 months, he transferred $387,000 into that account. The transfers looked like they were coded as consulting fees and service contracts. But when Robert dug deeper, the consultants and vendors didn't exist. More than that, Michael had taken out a business loan against Vertex's assets, $2 million, and $1.2 million of that had gone into the secondary account as well. "Sarah," Robert said when he presented his findings, "your husband is committing fraud. He's hiding assets. And based on these email communications your lawyer showed me, he might be planning to commit marital fraud by transferring business assets to someone else before a divorce settlement." My chest felt tight. What do? We document everything. We get a copy of everything. Bank statements, loan documents, communications. We're going to need these for the divorce proceedings, and potentially for criminal charges. Criminal charges. The words echoed in my head. Patricia advised me to wait. She said, "We're in a strong position now. We have evidence of infidelity, fraud, asset hiding, and potentially criminal activity. When you file for divorce, we're going to file aggressively. We're going to go after every penny. And if he wants to fight us, we're prepared to escalate." "What kind of escalation?" I asked. "Reporting to the SEC, reporting to the IRS, maybe even law enforcement. But first, let's see if we can use this leverage to get him to cooperate." Part 3. The confrontation. Everything falls apart. By June 2023, I had a mountain of evidence. I had Robert's full forensic report. I had thousands of emails and text messages. I had bank statements. I had it all. Patricia advised me to file for divorce, but before I did, she suggested I try one final negotiation. "Sometimes," she said, "when someone knows they're caught, they'll make a deal. It's faster, cheaper, and you avoid trial. But we need to show him we're serious. So I hired a private investigator. I know, I know. This sounds insane, but I wanted proof. Physical, undeniable proof. The PI followed Michael and Natasha for 2 weeks. He photographed them leaving hotels. He got footage of them kissing in Michael's car in a parking garage. He had timestamps and documentation for everything. I had the photos printed and put them in an envelope. On June 15th, 2023, I told Michael I needed to talk to him. I asked him to come home early from work. He arrived at 5 p.m., probably expecting dinner or sex. Knowing him, he'd been texting Natasha that he'd get away for the evening. We sat down in the living room. The kids were at my mom's house. It was just us. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I was eerily calm. Michael, I need you to look at something. I handed him the envelope. He opened it, and I watched his face go from confused to pale to absolutely terrified in about 3 seconds. Sarah, don't, I said quietly. Don't lie to me anymore. I know about Natasha. I know about the money. I know about the hidden accounts. I know about the loan. I know everything. He stood up and started pacing. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been stealing from your own company. You've been planning to commit fraud. You've been planning to leave me for a 6-year-old who hates me. So, here's what's going to happen. I pulled out a letter from Patricia Chen. It was a settlement proposal. Michael's face went even whiter as he read it. This is my initial proposal, I said. You have 48 hours to have your lawyer review it and respond. If you don't accept it, I will file for divorce, and I will pursue every legal avenue available to me, including reporting your financial crimes to the SEC and IRS. Do you understand? Michael sat down. He looked like he might be sick. Sarah, please, I made a mistake. You never meant to, what? Never meant to betray me for 15 years? Never meant to hide millions of dollars? Never meant to plan your escape with a girl who's closer in age to our daughter than to you? Never meant to get caught? My voice was shaking now. I could feel years of resentment pouring out. I gave up my career for you. I built your business. I made your company successful. And this is how you repay me? Michael started crying, actual tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was having a midlife crisis, and she was. I don't care, I said, and I meant it. I don't need your apology. I need you to sign the papers. Number Part 4. The business strategy. Long game. Here's where it gets interesting. Michael's lawyer, some high-powered guy named Richard Sterling, reviewed our proposal and obviously rejected it. He sent back a counteroffer that was absolutely insulting. Michael was offering me $200,000 and part-time custody of the kids. He wanted to keep 85% of Vertex Solutions. Patricia and I looked at that counteroffer, and we both started laughing. Okay, Patricia said. He wants to play hardball. Let's play hardball. That's when I made a decision that some people might say was excessive, but honestly, I stand by it completely. Remember how Michael told me I did the accounting for Vertex's first 3 years? How I was at every investor meeting? How I helped develop the original pitch deck and business plan? Well, I had done something very smart in 2015 that Michael had completely forgotten about. I'd retained ownership in an initial 3% equity stake in the company. It was something Michael's original business advisor had recommended for continuity and legal purposes, or whatever the reason was. Michael had never thought about it. It was just sitting there in the corporate bylaws, my name on it. 3% of an $8 million company. That's $240,000 in equity that was completely separate from any divorce settlement. I called Patricia immediately. Patricia, what if I told you I had equity in Vertex? There was a long pause on the phone. Sarah, are you serious? Completely serious. I've got 3% ownership. It's in the corporate bylaws from 2015. Oh my God, Patricia said. Oh my God. Okay, do not tell anyone about this. Do you have documentation? Everything. I have the original bylaws. I have the corporate minutes. Sarah, listen to me very carefully. This changes everything. This gives us a massive amount of leverage. Here's what we did. We filed for divorce, but we also filed what's called a derivative lawsuit against Michael and Natasha. A derivative lawsuit is when a shareholder of a company sues on behalf of the company for actions that damage the company's value or involve fraud. I was suing Michael and Natasha for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, theft of company assets, unjust enrichment. The lawsuit alleged that Michael had been siphoning company money into hidden accounts, and that Natasha, as his accomplice and subordinate, had helped facilitate the fraud. Patricia also filed a motion with the court to freeze Michael's assets pending the divorce trial. This meant he couldn't touch that $1.2 million he'd hidden. He couldn't spend a dime of it. Michael absolutely lost his mind. He called me screaming, "What are you doing? You're going to destroy the company. You're going to destroy my career." "No," I said calmly. "You already did that. I'm just making sure you face consequences." "You're being irrational. This is insane. We can work this out." "Michael, you committed fraud. You committed adultery. You betrayed our family. There's nothing to past. Work out. See you in court." I hung up. Number part 5. The counterattack, his fatal mistake. Now, here's where Michael did something really, really stupid. Panicking about the lawsuit and the asset freeze, Michael tried to do an end run around the court order. He worked with Natasha and his accountant to move money from the hidden account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. He was trying to hide it. But remember Robert, my forensic accountant? He'd flagged the secondary account, and the bank was now monitoring it as part of the court order. The moment Michael tried to move the money, the bank alerted the court. The court was not happy. Patricia and I got a call from the judge's chambers. The judge, Judge Harold Morrison, and I'll never forget this man's name, because he probably saved my life, wanted to hold a hearing on the alleged contempt of court. Michael had literally violated a court order. He was attempting to hide assets in violation of a judicial freeze. When Michael showed up to that hearing, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. His lawyer, Richard Sterling, looked absolutely panicked. The prosecutor, because yes, the state had now gotten involved, given the fraud allegations, presented evidence of the attempted offshore transfer. Michael's lawyer tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding and that Michael had no knowledge of the transfer. But the emails told a different story. Emails between Michael, Natasha, and his accountant that said things like, "Let's move it tonight before they notice," and "We need to get this out of the country." The judge looked at Michael over his glasses and said something I'll never forget. "Mr. Harrison, you have violated a direct court order. You have attempted to conceal assets in violation of that order. You are in contempt of court. However, I'm going to give you one chance to explain yourself before I find you in criminal contempt, which could result in jail time." Michael looked at his lawyer, who just shook his head slightly. Like, "You're screwed." Michael started sobbing. Actual sobs, right there in the courtroom. "Your Honor, I made mistakes. I was confused. I didn't understand the order correctly. Please, I have children. I can't go to jail." Judge Morrison was unmoved. "Your children have a mother? And based on what I'm reading in these documents, their mother seems far more concerned with their welfare than you are. You hid nearly $2 million from your company, while your wife and children lived in a home that you've been secretly trying to refinance without her knowledge. You attempted to commit fraud, and when caught, you attempted to hide assets offshore." The judge paused and looked at the state prosecutor. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. In the meantime, I'm freezing all of your personal assets in addition to the business assets. You will not move any money anywhere without written permission from this court. Do you understand me? Yes, Your Honor, Michael whispered. Michael's face, when he heard those words, I actually felt a little bit of satisfaction. Not revenge exactly, but justice. Finally, number, part 6. The final blow. The revenge plot. But wait, the story isn't over yet. While all of this was happening with Michael, something else was going on at Vertex Solutions that we'd put in motion. You see, Patricia and I had a theory. We thought that if we could convince Vertex's board of investors to have Michael removed as CEO pending the investigation into fraud, we could potentially get the company's value protected. We could also position myself as an equity holder to have significant influence in the company's management. Patricia reached out to the company's board members. She presented them with Robert's forensic report. She showed them the fraud allegations. She showed them the attempted offshore transfer. The investors were furious. Here's a thing about venture capital investors. They hate fraud more than anything in the world. Fraud tanks valuations. Fraud creates legal liability. Fraud destroys companies. And Michael had been committing it. The board called an emergency meeting on July 2nd, 2023. Michael was not invited. They called me instead. I walked into that boardroom. Patricia was with me and sat down at a table with 3 venture capital investors and the board chairman, a woman named Linda Torres, who'd been with the company since Series A funding. Sarah, Linda said, we've reviewed the forensic accounting report and the allegations against Michael. We've also reviewed your equity stake. As the other significant shareholder in this company, we wanted to speak with you before we make any decisions about corporate governance. Patricia squeezed my arm gently. This was happening. We're considering removing Michael from his position as CEO, Linda continued. We're concerned that his actions represent a breach of fiduciary duty to the company and to the investors. However, we need to know, if we make this move, are you going to cooperate with a smooth transition? Or are we looking at a prolonged legal battle? I took a breath. I'll cooperate, I said. But I have 2 conditions, which are, first, Natasha Volkov is terminated, effective immediately. She's not just complicit in Michael's fraud, she's also a liability to the company's reputation. Second, I want to be involved in the transition. I want a seat on the board, and I want to help lead the company through this transition to preserve its value. Linda looked at the other investors. There was a slight nod from each of them. That's acceptable, Linda said. We'll proceed with the removal of Michael and Natasha effective tomorrow morning. We'll make a press release about management changes due to personal reasons. We'll have the company's general counsel handle the terminations. And I'll start immediately, I said, helping to manage client relationships and make sure this transition doesn't damage the business. I was shaking when I left that boardroom. I'd just gone from being a scorned wife to becoming a board member and part owner of an $8 million company. Number, Part 7. The Domino Effect. The Nuclear Revenge. The next morning, Michael showed up to his office at 8 a.m., like normal. He was met by security and the company's general counsel, who told him that he was being removed from his position as CEO effective immediately, pending investigation into fraud allegations. He was placed on immediate administrative leave, with his employment terminated on July 31st, unless things changed. I'm told Michael's face went absolutely white. He tried to call me screaming, but I didn't answer. Patricia had advised me to have no direct contact with him. Everything would go through lawyers now. Natasha received her termination notice the same day. When Michael found out that she'd been fired too, when he realized that she'd been cut loose. I heard through the grapevine that he'd screamed at her on the phone, that she'd destroyed his life, and that they were done. What happened next was predictable and beautiful. Natasha, who was suddenly facing unemployment and no reference from her previous employer, started looking for a new job. But guess what? Word travels in the tech industry. She'd been involved in a fraud scandal at a major software company. Her LinkedIn profile had comments from people saying she was a fraud collaborator and unreliable. She couldn't get hired anywhere. And when Michael tried to distance himself from her, claiming she'd manipulated him into the affair, Natasha did something extraordinary. She went to Patricia's office and offered to testify against Michael in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Patricia nearly fell out of her chair. With Natasha's testimony, we had a witness to Michael's fraud. We had someone on the inside confirming everything. The district attorney upgraded the charges against Michael from civil fraud to criminal fraud. Michael was indicted on 3 felony counts: wire fraud, asset concealment, and attempted money laundering. His mugshot was absolutely devastating. He looked like a broken man. The Hartford Courant ran an article about the case. Local tech exec arrested in fraud scheme. Wife files divorce. Number, Part 8. The settlement, justice served. Michael's lawyer came to the negotiating table very quickly after that. He was facing criminal prosecution, a massive divorce lawsuit, a derivative lawsuit from the company, and he'd been fired from his own business. He had no leverage left. None. Patricia and I sat across from Richard Sterling in a conference room, and he looked like he might cry. "My client would like to discuss a settlement," he said quietly. Patricia looked at me, and I gave a slight nod. "We're listening," Patricia said. "Michael is willing to accept a significant settlement to Sarah in exchange for a plea deal with the district attorney where she doesn't testify." "Sarah would testify," Patricia said, "because that's the right thing to do. But we're willing to listen to your offer." Richard slid a document across the table. I read it, and honestly, it was more than fair. It was generous. Michael was offering me $1.8 million in cash from his personal and frozen assets, 20% of Vertex Solutions equity, worth approximately $1.6 million, based on the latest valuation, full custody of Emma and Lucas. I'd been planning to ask for full custody anyway, but he was giving it up. A pension of $50,000 per year until the kids turned 18. He would pay for all of the kids' education through college. He would pay all alimony to me, $10,000 per month for 10 years. When I added it all up, the total settlement was worth approximately $3.4 million plus ongoing support. Patricia looked at me. "It's a good offer. I'd take it. One more thing," I said to Richard. "Michael needs to sign a statement admitting to the affair and the fraud. It won't be public, but I need it in writing, notarized, for my own records. And he needs to attend family therapy with me and the kids, for their benefit." Richard looked uncomfortable. "I'll ask him." Michael agreed to all of it. The divorce was finalized on November 15th, 2023, just 4 months after I'd discovered the emails. Part 9. The aftermath. What happened to everyone? So let me tell you what happened to everyone after this went down. He took a plea deal with the district attorney. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and agreed to cooperate in an investigation. His sentencing was deferred, and he's on probation. He had to pay restitution to Vertex Solutions of $600,000. He's currently working as a consultant for a company in Philadelphia, not in leadership, just as a technical consultant. He makes about $120,000 a year, which is nothing compared to what he used to make. He sees Emma and Lucas every other weekend, and their relationship with him is distant at best. Emma has told me multiple times that she doesn't trust him, and Lucas barely talks to him. Michael tried to play victim with them, telling them that their mother took away his company, and it backfired. Both kids now understand what he did, and they've chosen to be distant from him. That's not my doing. That's the consequence of his own actions. After testifying against Michael, she was essentially blacklisted from the tech industry. She worked for a while at a retail company doing administrative work, making about $35,000 a year. The last I heard, she'd moved back to Russia. I don't think about her much anymore. She was an accessory to Michael's crimes, and she paid the price. Vertex Solutions, with Michael and Natasha removed, and with me helping to guide the transition, the company actually thrived. We brought in a new CEO, a woman named Dr. Rachel Kim, who'd previously worked at Google. And under her leadership, Vertex's value increased to $12 million within 2 years. The investors were thrilled. And I, as a board member and equity holder, was thriving as well. I went back to part-time consulting work, but instead of building someone else's dream, I was building my own. I started my own marketing firm, and now I make around $150,000 per year, and I own a piece of a valuable company. I'm financially independent. I don't need Michael's pension. I don't need anything from him. My kids, Emma and Lucas, went to therapy to process what happened. It was hard for them, and I'm not going to pretend the divorce didn't affect them. But you know what? They also learned something incredibly important. They learned that their mother doesn't accept betrayal. They learned that consequences are real. And they learned that standing up for yourself isn't about being bitter. It's about self-respect. Emma is now 14, and she's actually told me that watching me handle the situation gave her confidence that she could face hard things. Lucas, who's 11, just asked me last month if I was proud of how I handled everything. I told him I was proud that I protected our family. I'm proud that I didn't fall apart. And I'm proud that I faced him with truth. Me. I'm happy. Genuinely happy. After 3 years of marriage therapy and individual therapy, I've rebuilt my life. I'm dating someone new, a man named David, not my brother, who's a pediatrician. He's kind and honest, and most importantly, he respects me. I have financial security. I have my children. I have my career. Most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Would I change what I did? Some people might say I was excessive, that I should have just taken a standard divorce settlement and moved on. But I don't think so. Michael didn't just cheat on me. He committed fraud. He was planning to hide assets from his family. He was planning to commit marriage fraud. He was stealing. And I don't regret for 1 second making sure that he faced consequences. Number, Part 10. The reflection was I the asshole. You might be reading this and wondering, was I the asshole? Some people might say yes. Some might say that I was vindictive, that I was excessive, that I should have just taken the easy way out and moved on with my life. Some might say that pursuing criminal charges was excessive, that I was trying to destroy him. But here's my response to that. I didn't commit fraud. Michael did. I didn't hide assets. Michael did. I didn't plan to commit marriage fraud. Michael did. I didn't cheat. Michael did. All I did was respond proportionally to his actions. I hired a lawyer. I hired an accountant. I gathered evidence. I presented facts to the appropriate authorities. I used leverage I legally had, my equity stake, to protect my interests. Was I angry? Yes. Was I vengeful? Maybe a little. But was I wrong? I don't think so. And here's the thing that people don't understand about these situations. Sometimes, being the good person who lets someone off easy just teaches them that they can do it again. Michael has never, in his entire life, faced real consequences for his actions until me. His parents bailed him out of everything as a kid. He'd skated through life on charm and luck. And he thought he could do the same thing in this situation. He couldn't, because I didn't let him. Do I think he's learned his lesson? I'm honestly not sure. But I know that he's lost a lot. His company, his reputation, his kids' respect, his freedom. He's still on probation. His money. He's paying $10,000 a month to his ex-wife for a crime he committed against her family. That's a pretty significant consequence. And I get to keep my life, my kids, and my dignity. So was I the asshole? I genuinely don't think so. I think I was a woman who got betrayed, and instead of falling apart, I got strategic. I got smart. I got justice. And honestly, I'd do it all again. Number the end epilogue. 1 year later. It's now November 2024. And I wanted to add one final update because something pretty incredible happened just last week. Emma had her 15th birthday, and she threw a party at our new house. Yes, I bought a new house, a beautiful colonial in Westport, with my settlement money. She invited about 15 kids from school, and you know what she did? She pulled me aside and said, "Mom, I want to thank you for everything, for not letting Dad get away with what he did, for showing me that when someone betrays you, you stand up for yourself. You've taught me how to be strong." I actually cried. I'm tearing up right now, even thinking about it. She's becoming this incredible young woman, and she's going to grow up knowing that her mother didn't accept disrespect. That matters. That teaches her something about her own worth. And Lucas? He came home from school last week with a drawing he'd made in art class. It's a picture of our family, me, him, Emma, and our dog, and it's titled Home. When I asked him about it, he said, "This is home. This is what matters. Not what Dad did. Just us." That right there, that's worth everything. I'd do it all again, 100 times over, if it meant my kids grew up knowing that their mother fought for them, stood up for herself, and didn't accept betrayal. That is the real victory. And that is why I have zero regrets.